the type of thing that somebody who is very functionally orientated would say, I come to the Club Med for the quality of the facilities. So this is clearly a functional comment. Where somebody who says, I come here because of the range of activity, the fact that there is no cash, and the fact that it is, that I can find everything that I need, but not for any particular atmosphere. Or somebody who says, look, some people regret the past, but what I like is the organization. It's a nice situation. It's comfortable. There can be sport. So very functionally driven. They know where they're going. Whereas the emotional are really kind of talking about, I love the club. I'll always love the club. I have so many memories with the club, right from the first time when I was 2. This is a person that went to the club every year from the age of 2. Somebody says, oh, please do not suppress the club where there's still the true feeling, where we know that it is going to be unforgettable holiday, when they've got all the little things that the other places do not have. Or comments like, the emotion of the members is so palpable that just thinking about it, my eyes just kind of, water. So these are people who are really into sort of goosebump territory when they talk about Club Med. If we look at some illustration of the individual versus collective, I mean, the collective is where are all the sports activity where you just met people and people that you would not meet in real life, and you would kind of make friends with them. That's a fantastic way of meeting people. I can understand that people may want to sort of have a quiet time, but at the same time, well, why go to the club if you don't want to meet people? And who wants a plasma TV in your room? The aim of the club is not to stay in your room. Whereas the individual says, look, it's the conviviality is not something that I'm looking for or will survive. It's okay to have a village that's all about a party and the crazy signs and all the routine, but at the same time, this is not what I'm looking for. Or here, the whole behavior is a little bit funny. I want some small table. I want a place that is actually going to be a little bit more for me. And if we look at the way, I'm going to put the animation because otherwise we'll never get there. If we look at the response to change, on the positive side, people who are not motivated to fight would say things like, well, everything changed, c'est la vie. This is life. We can't expect the club not to change. Everybody says the club changes, so what? Everything changes. So those are very fatalistic or resigned, if you like, to what's happened. They might not like it, but they accept it. If we're going into the negative of people who are not prepared to fight, we'll have people saying, I really regret the original. Gilbert was one of the original founder. But I've now made my decision. I don't think the new Club Med is for me. Okay, so those are people who are simply not going to go anymore. They just don't like the new Club Med, and so they're going to give up. Then you've got people who are actually really wanting to save the old club, and they were the most amusing and in some ways the more heartwarming of the fans. They were saying, help, let us save the one unique, true, authentic Club Med. I mean, there were people who were wanting to write letters. There were people who really wanted to start action so that those nasty managers couldn't change the club. They were sending letters that other people could sign in order to defend the club. And these people are very much aggressively fighting the new management. So they're the rebels, and whether they're rebels with or without a cause is not clear. And then there are some that are positive, who say, look, I went to the new facility, it's great, I quite like it, it's nice to be able to be with people when I want to and to be on my own when I want to. So these people are the ones that have, if you like, been taken over the line and are happy to accept the new system. So we call them the seduced because they quite like the new idea. But I think what we see here is a real perfect case of how some unintended consequences can occur to what would seem a textbook no-brainer. You've got a brand that's losing money, what do? You reposition it, and they were very hard-nosed about it. And I remember having this conversation with one of the managers in Paris, where, she said more or less, well, look, if people can't afford to pay the extra price, well, then so be it. We don't want them as our consumers if they can't afford it. So, very hard-nosed and very cold in relation to that big, loyal fan club of the brand. Having said that, there is clearly a risk there, because if the number of people that are ready to depart is bigger than the people who are seduced, then, they are a brand without a fan club, and they're a brand that actually needs to reacquire an entirely new market at the time when there's a lot of competition, either in the top upscale type or in the low-cost delivery as well. So one of the things that they are doing now, which I watch with interest, is the fact that they are entering new markets where people do not have that kind of DNA or that kind of history about the brand. Big strategy about China in particular, where a lot of attention has been orientated by the Club Med. For them, it's a large reservoir of new consumers, you know, a clean, blank slate, people who are not going to regret the good old days, and people who are going to accept the positioning of Club Med as a really special place, you know, for refined type of holidays, because they don't know anything else. So in this sense, what we have here is the Club Med now having to react to the fact that they kind of messed up the home market a little bit, because they were very quick to leave the territory that they had secured for the sake of a new territory, which they did not know would cost them the old base. And the fact that there was such a strong and active resistance by consumers is something that took them entirely by surprise. Now, this is one phenomenon, as I said, which I think marketers need to watch. You know, you need to engage your consumers and take them over the line. You need to tell them why you're doing it, and you need to kind of take them with you. But there are some instances where the whole phenomenon, in the case of Club Med, they did something to provoke this. But there are some other instances where the brands are actually much more victim of something happening to their brand that they have absolutely no control. And I call that the appropriation of brand meanings, because that's very much what's happened. The brand is out there with a particular positioning, and then another group of people who are not at all the intended target decides to take ownership of that brand and declares it to be their emblem. And then that brand may not be desirable, nor indeed congruent with the target market. So, you know, I'll talk about two cases because they are perhaps the most visible one. But it all comes from the fact that brands are social signals as well as product that people consume. In other words, they are also something that signals to others the sort of person that we are. The prestige brand have been in particular in danger in relation to that, and that's because income has become a sort of surrogate definition of social class. And we all know that some people can actually have money without necessarily having the other attributes of a higher social class. In my latest textbook, I call them cashed-up bogans, you know, the cubs. They are those people who make more money as a plumber than somebody has with, you know, 2 PhDs and their own company. And they really mess up the marketing strategy. Because all of a sudden, you can't actually describe what the driver of a BMW looks like. You can't describe what the owner of a Vuitton bag looks like, because it's just people with money. And people with money can look very different. So the notion that the social class kind of positioning is becoming fuzzy comes from the fact that really income is distributed somewhat differently. There is also the problem of pirated goods. Because if a Vuitton bag looks like a Vuitton bag, who's to know whether it's the right one or not? I mean, I get mildly offended when I carry my Vuitton bag and people say, is that a real one? I say, what do you take me for? Would I go around with a non-real one? But the point is that they look very similar, so I know it's the real one, but you know, people ask. So maybe it says something about me rather than my bag, but anyway. The point is that pirated goods are actually part of you know, what blurs the boundary between what the brand actually stands for. And certainly it explains the very costly battle that some of the brands actually undertake against pirated goods, because they want to keep very crisp the social stratification that they have in mind. Some of them are actually saying, look, it doesn't matter, because the people who buy fake Vuitton are people who can't afford the real one. So I haven't lost a sale by not selling a real Vuitton to that person. No, but what you have is a person that's carrying a Vuitton bag that shouldn't. And the question is, to what extent is it damaging a brand that a person who can't afford it is actually carrying one? From the point of view of your positioning, how harmful is that? And we'll go through those two examples because I think they really embody the problem. Burberry, which is really a good example because it's, you know, people will argue this is one of the few genuine luxury fashion brands in Britain, and has been extremely successful in stamping its presence on the global scene with, you know, super model Kate Moss, you know, the fact that the wife of the Prime Minister was carrying it, and it's very visually easy to recognize, you know, this kind of beige check pattern. And it was all going gangbuster, and everybody was happy at Burberry until it started to become the emblem of thugs. And if you are a luxury brand, being the emblem of thugs is not a desirable outcome. By 2004, we had some pubs in Scotland that was actually banning people who carried Burberry stuff, even if it was authentic stuff. You couldn't get into a pub in Scotland. Can you imagine the embarrassment? There were hooligans that were actually carrying Burberry gear for the purpose of recognizing each other as hooligans. Can you imagine if you actually carried the proper stuff and you were not a hooligan, how embarrassing that would be. Football club called themselves the House of Burberry, for crying out loud. You know, can you imagine the marketing manager of Burberry shaking in his boots, you know, while this is happening? I mean, it basically became the uniform of the Shabs, which is the British equivalent of the Cashmere Bogans. And then, of course, the brand became the object of jokes, and it didn't help when Kate Moss was spotted snorting some white powder. The whole point was, you know, what on earth does it mean now to be the marketer of a luxury brand? And the initial response was mild indifference. It says, you know, most of our sales are outside of the UK, so we're not too fast. It's not going to affect the global market. And then they kind of started to think, okay, well, what could we do to make our brand less appealing to thugs and football clubs and hooligans? They removed the baseball cap from their range. You have to question why a luxury fashion brand would have had a baseball cap in their range in the first place. Maybe this is me being French, but you know, what were they thinking? They started to crack down on counterfeit products, so you know, they didn't want the wrong sort of people to carry their brand. And they started to make the pattern less ubiquitous, so that some of the products were actually Burberry products without necessarily having the beige check pattern. Rather than being on just about 20% or more of the product, it became something that was seen perhaps less obviously. And then, of course, in terms of long-term strategy, they started to be a little bit more focused, so that they would actually target people somewhat better. They started to even talk about abandoning altogether the UK market. Let's not go where the hooligans go. Let's just kind of aim at new market. And of course, the solution to everybody's marketers' problem, go to China. Because you know, if it's good enough for Club Med, it's got to be good enough for Burberry. And another example of that is a very similar case with the French brand Lacoste. If you know a little bit about the history of Lacoste, Lacoste is the polo shirt with a crocodile. The reason why it's called crocodile is because there was a bet actually with René Lacoste, who was a tennis player, that if he won the game, he would get a croc skin suitcase, and that kind of translated into a logo. By 1960, the shirt was just a basic cotton sort of sport equipment, but after 1960, it just took off, and it came in lots of different colors and became very ubiquitous as a really good quality, somewhat classic brand. Without really much aggressive marketing. It was never sold on the internet, it only was in licensed stores, and it was really very widely adopted. The King of Spain would wear it, but your taxi driver would wear it too. But it had a certain class attached to it. Now, the problem that they had, and the thing that started going wrong with Lacoste, is actually hip-hop. Because what happened is that a high-profile hip-hop artist with a sweet name of Doc Gyneco decided that he was going to wear Lacoste. And he started wearing Lacoste, and of course, a good logo does what? It makes your brand very visible. So everybody could see that the hip-hop artists were wearing the crocodile. And that became, you know, an emblem of the hip-hop culture. And if you know anything about hip-hop, and I know not much about hip-hop, except I did supervise a PhD who worked in that area, there is a very strong element of social capital that comes from knowing what are the right brand to wear and what are not. In some ways, they were not interested in the counterfeits. They were not really interested in the copies. Those hip-hop artists wanted the real thing because they thought it was rather sweet to have this bourgeois brand as they were sort of singing things that were really anti-establishment. So initially, it was not about counterfeit. It was about Lacoste taking a different positioning. But of course, in the banlieue, in the rough suburbs of France, people could not afford Lacoste and started wearing anything that looked like a crocodile on their polo. And of course, this was exactly the same as with Burberry. The more visible the logo, the faster the downfall and the stronger the association with the wrong crowd. Sales started to decrease. Street kids became the brand emblems, if you like. And the initial response by the company was woeful. They kind of thought, well, let's take a lead from the market. Maybe we need to open stores in the banlieue. You know, let's have outlets in the rough estates outside of the French cities. Wrong. Not a very good idea. You know, they started using edgy sort of street language in their advertising, and basically what they got is the people from the banlieue thought that they were making fun of them, and the people who were from the bourgeois side said, I'm not going to have anything to do with the brand, and the brand started to go into free fall.